Can you share the path that led you to founding Farmers?
For me, the restaurant industry was different than a lot of other people's paths. I worked in independent bars and restaurants when I was in college, but as soon as I graduated, I went to work for a restaurant corporation. So my roots in the restaurant industry were built around, like, yes, hospitality, but that's just table stakes. It was built around inventory and velocity and how quickly product moved through the restaurant and how did you make money and how is a P&L structured and the chart of accounts. And so for me, I graduated from college. I went straight into management for TGI Fridays. This was 1992. Fridays was still a really highly regarded restaurant
For sure.
brand. We cooked from scratch when I got there. Being a Fridays
Flair bartenders.
Yeah.
That was you were still into like the Tom Cruise cocktail era.
Totally. It was actually cool being a Fridays bartender.
Yeah.
And so I had 6 total years at Fridays, and I really learned, and I went manager, kitchen manager, AGM, GM, and I got to learn how to build the systems and the nuts and the bolts and how to deliver culture. And of course, the hospitality component. And then I went and did an early stage company. There were 6 restaurants when I joined. It was called the Cheesecake Factory. So people know
I've
it
heard
now,
of it. Small menus. Yeah.
but at 6 restaurants, not many people had heard of it. So I moved to LA, and I was with Cheesecake from restaurant 6 till about restaurant 20. And I got to see what happens with scale, but built on systems, big menu, but again, really complex cooking and operating systems, but it was all written down and we built the how-to. Then I did a startup from zero, but backed by Brinker International and working for Phil Romano, who created Macaroni Grill, Fuddruckers. This thing was called Eatsy's Market and Bakery. And that took me from the opportunity to start with store 1. And it was also market, bakery, fresh food retail, catering, plus the restaurant component, coffee bar. So that was really my 20s. That was a total, what I just described, of about 11 years. And then in my early 30s, joined forces with a former colleague who'd been a mentor of mine and opened our first restaurant and, started. So I had those years to establish, for me, kind of the math of the business and the how-to of the business and my own personal why. And, I'm 55. So now I got, 25 years as an entrepreneur.
So I want to go back to those corporate days, because one of the things that I think working at scale provides is a more elegant, a more simplistic model, because that's really the only way you achieve scale. When I look at most independents, what I see and what I experienced myself firsthand was chaos. Right? Chaos, because there are no systems. So much of what you do is built around trial and error. When you walked away from that experience, how complicated did you see like a single unit restaurant operation to be?
Well, when my partner Mike and I opened our first restaurant, and Josh, this is why I'm glad to talk to you about it. I actually love these conversations because we think we're from the same industry, but there's 2 different industries. There's this, let's call it the independent restaurant world and the corporate restaurant world. I came up in the corporate restaurant world. So when I became an independent restaurateur, I just did the only things I know how to do. Our restaurant was not chaos. Our restaurant was systematized, order guides, production sheets, prep to shelf life, studying the PMix. I didn't know there was another way to do it. We weren't, so I actually don't know. I hear these stories about our industry.
Sure.
And that's just not been my experience.
That's wild. And let's also talk about that first restaurant. So how many seats was it?
The first restaurant that Mike and I opened that we owned was 3,000 square feet, about 125 seats, full service, kind of a fried chicken. It was just outside of Dallas, Texas. That's where we were living at the time. Small restaurant. We weren't ambitious, and we were organized and took everything we knew from our background. It went well until it failed 14 months later. We went out of business. We lost all our money. So by no means am I saying that just because I came up on the corporate side, that the systems don't guarantee your success. I do think the chaos guarantees your failure eventually.
Sure.
But you can have success or failure within either of those approaches. But we learned a lot from our first restaurant that failed. And especially for me, I learned, wow, those deep corporate backers and and a decade of systems, even though I'd seen a startup as well, it was still backed by Brinker. So the whole parent company thing for accounting, marketing, purchasing, procurement. So I really got my ass kicked in my first restaurant to figure out what it means to be truly independent.
Wait, well, let me ask you, like, what do you think caused the failure of that restaurant? Looking back, what do you think if the systems were in place? I would assume consistency was a given, and I think this speaks to the fallacy in the industry, right? Which is, I'm sure you guys did a great job. I'm sure you put out a best in class product, and I'm sure you delivered both the product and the service with consistency. And I believe that if you do all three of those things, you're still highly likely to fail. What was the missing ingredient?
We failed primarily because we were arrogant. We didn't realize it, but I think that's an important word to use. We thought we knew better for the customer. I didn't ask the customer, do you want an elevated fried chicken restaurant? I didn't really study the customer and say, would you want green beans that are actually green? Would you want mac and cheese where we make the pasta with the and so we were like, oh wow, these restaurants are popular in the Texas suburbs. We're gonna do it, but with better chicken, better oil, better vegetables, and what the customer said to us, and boy, we executed. And some customers definitely loved it, but not nearly enough. And customers from almost the beginning would say things like, why are these green beans so green? Oh, well, that's what fresh beans look like, not beans out of a can. And why does the iced tea taste funny? Oh, that's all natural iced tea. The shit that's in Lipton is and the customers, some of them were just looking at me like, dude, what are you talking about? And I think had we opened that exact restaurant downtown in Dallas, but we didn't have the money to do downtown. So we're like, it'll be less expensive. We'll go to the burbs. We'll give the burbs a suburban thing. And it was really our entrepreneurial, we know better. And it has stuck with me forever of you do need to understand your guest, and nobody knows what they want better than the guest.
How do you build that though? So I think that there's this push pull, and then I definitely want to get into founding farmers, but like there's this push pull between like doing something for someone that is not you and it being an extension of self. And I don't come at it from like an ideologue's perspective. Like I come at it from the perspective of a professional marketer, which is I can't effectively, authentically, in a way that will resonate, market to anyone other than me because I am the only one in my head. And so was the product market fit failure around you were building for someone that was not you and you didn't understand their need set? Or was it
Yeah,
that you were building for yourself and you're
we,
not this market?
that's right. We built for ourselves with the ignorant presumption that wouldn't everybody agree with us? It's
Sure.
like people tend to love their own opinions. I certainly loved mine. I loved my opinions a lot less today and over the decades as I've learned, how often they're wrong. So that was the crux of why we failed. And the second reason we failed is we were not capitalized nearly well enough to play the long game. And this was another thing that I didn't understand coming out of the corporate restaurant world, where you had to control every penny, you had to know the math, you had to be able to do that. And if you didn't, you could get fired. But the restaurant wouldn't fail because there were guardrails and they could put someone in behind you
Sure.
and execute it. So I was just stunned. Holy shit, look how expensive everything is. And now we're hemorrhaging cash. And how are we going to do the marketing, add new guests, spread the word so that we could find our customer?
Sure.
And that gave me the dose of reality of it's cliche, but like the strong survive, and we were not strong in capital. And so that was the combo that killed us.
And so you take these corporate wins into this independent struggle. And then out of that, I think came like a whole new ideology, right? A whole new approach to the industry. And so, how did you marry those two things together into what ultimately became Founding Farmers?
Well, what I got a taste of loving was being an entrepreneur and not having a boss and just having no one to blame. Like that failure was so painful, and no one to blame but me and Mike, to blame ourselves and look in the mirror. And it reminded me of sports. I was a wrestler growing up, and I was like, yeah, man, nowhere to hide. That's how you get fucking better, when you are the only one to blame. So I was totally sold on the entrepreneur, restaurateur, staying on the independent side. And I think that the humbling, people talk about humility, but usually people who talk about it aren't it. Like you got to feel the kick in the teeth and actually have the scar tissue. And then that is like, you don't have to be humble. You just, like, the pain is visceral. You
Well,
remember
for
it
sure.
and you're like, I'm not going to do that again. So we took, I think, our own leadership, lessons, and parlayed that into, we got it. How are we going to open another restaurant? As opposed to how are we going to go get jobs? Because that could have been the thing. And so we built a consulting business, which actually still exists today under a new brand, but still exists. And so we managed to earn a living. I lived in my mother-in-law's basement for 3 years. We scraped by, and then we got lucky, met this group of American family farmers who wanted to invest. And we said, great, we're trying to open more of our own restaurants. We won't do it for you as consultants or as a management company. We'll do it with you as partners. And that gave birth to Founding Farmers.
And that leads to like this central value you have, that restaurants don't fail because of food, they fail because of misaligned incentives. Talk to me about how you began to see ownership and the structure around ownership is the key component of success, not operation.
So this alignment topic, I mean, Josh, it's just one of my favorite words, because without it, you're dead. I think without it, inevitably, all your relationships end up sucking or cratering, whether they're in business or they're personal. And so we were able to line up the interests that the investor, that the capital had. We lined it up with their interests and their abilities and their vision for the future. We lined it up with what we were able to do as restaurateurs, and let's just call it like relatively early as independent business people. And we realized that this just needs to be, that our staff and our team needs to say the same thing and feel the same thing. So I just connected the whole, like, well, what's your why? When people say, well, I want to be a cook here because, like, no, not that why. Like, why? What's your why in life? Like, why do you exist? Then let's see how this job fits in. Then let's see what we're trying to do at Founding Farmers. And I look for that overlap in why or vision or, alignment, like something that matters that someone's trying to do in their own life. And then we can grow together. Otherwise, we inevitably grow apart. And I think this is why, look, am I proud of our food and all of the stuff that our team does and our beverage and the innovation? Yeah, I'm proud of all of that. But why are we still here at 18 years with 1,500 employees and 100 million in revenue? And still, in the struggle, but enjoying the journey. And why do we have so many people who've been with us the whole time, and investors who've been with us the whole time? Because we started with that kind of alignment. And so you get through the hard times and the struggle because you're really all focused on the same things for a business why and a personal why.
Well, and it's the investment is baked into the cake because there's mutual investment. Dr. Phil has this thing that my mother has told me my whole life. This idea that someone in every relationship has to be the hero. Typically, she tells me that to guilt me into calling one of my relatives. But the idea here is that in any relationship, someone has to care first and someone has to care more. And so when you look at the industry at large, you would say most line level employees are completely disengaged. They don't care. Right. And so what we can do is we can say, well, that is just a generational issue and we'll have to wait for the next generation to tackle this. Or we could say maybe they don't care because we don't care enough about them. And again, to your point, I don't think anyone wants to work for you. I don't know if anyone wants to work for anyone. What they want to do is they want to work towards their own goals, their own values. And there is this ability to create that alignment. But it starts with truly understanding where they want to be and how their role with you can help facilitate that. And the reason that I bring it up is, where does that relationship start? I would assume in the interview.
Absolutely in the interview as far as the relationship, but reputation starts at first. Like, why did you apply for a job here? Let's start there. And if the answer is, oh, I don't know, I'm applying for jobs at 12 places. Okay, cool. Then let's find out if we should even bother having an interview. If a relationship starts off transactional, it's probably going to just continue transactional. So we try to preach and spread our message out there and build our reputation of what folks might get if they come and explore working with us. And then in the interview, I try to do a lot of listening. I know, because I hear these stories from people when they tell me they go and they interview other places or wherever. And it's actually the interviewer is like telling you, this is how it is and this is how it is. You don't learn anything when you're talking. You only learn when you're listening. So I want to try to listen when we're hiring people. At this point right now, I'm only hiring like salaried level folks. But I have all my relationships with the hourly level folks. I have managing partners in the restaurants that are doing that hiring, but I'm still building those relationships. People want to be seen, valued, and heard. The job, in my view, is just secondary. But Josh, this is why I say, like, my world of the restaurant industry, no one is coming to work for me to say, you can treat me like shit. I'm going to get it on my resume. And then I worked at a place that had a Michelin star. So I'm going to work at Noma, get abused, but it's going to be good. No one's saying that to me, right? People are saying to me, like, I love food, or I love hospitality. I need an income. I want to work in a place that I could stay. And that's, so I have to be a good place, because what I have to offer is like a great environment. I don't have some other like industry accolade. And I tell people, like, we're trying to win People's Choice Awards, and we're starting with like our employees. Like, I'd rather win Employer of the Year than a restaurant industry award.
Sure.
I admire people who win restaurant industry awards. That's just not our strategy.
And so foundational to all of this is ownership structure. And I think we've talked about it before, but sustainability is always seen as local produce, compostable packaging. But in research, like you've argued that all of those things as it relates to sustainability are cosmetic, right? And that sustainability actually starts with ownership structure.
It does.
What does that look like? What does a sustainable ownership structure look like?
So for us, and I would frame this word sustainability, it's the lowercase s. Just like look it up in the dictionary. It just means something like, something that will still be here tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So the sustainability thing with a capital S, the green movement, etc., that's valuable. We do a lot of that. But if that's not on a sustainable business model, then you can recycle all the way into bankruptcy, right? You can compost until your restaurant's closed. Who cares? No one cares. It only matters if you stay in business. So for us, the model was this group of farmers would invest. They would be the equity investors. And so they would get cash on cash returns. And they would also create an investment vehicle so that other independent farmers could become investors, even if they were not accredited. Most people in America are excluded from investing in private deals because if you do it legally, because they're not accredited. So we created an investment vehicle to let farmers participate in the potential profits deeper into the supply chain, all the way from the plate. And so the farmers had a mission: create more access to investment, vertically integrate, influence the general public, be a market maker for family farmed product. Some of these these investors who were farmers are also then became our suppliers. So they're really in it, with us. And so that is the foundational business model that we have. And their expectations for investment return, where they wanted to play the long game. The bigger the company, the more family farmed product we buy. The bigger the company, the more guests we serve, the more we influence. The more people who work for us and learn this might be people who, work elsewhere, spread this message, influence other chefs to buy this way, other managers to operate this way, etc. So that's the foundational business model. Our farmers own more of the company than Mike and I own. So they own the majority of the company. They're not restaurateurs, we run it. But that is what gives us the foundation of the Founding Farmers Group.
And you spoke to it earlier, but I mean, you would, like, someone hearing all of this would think, like, how quaint, Dan. Like, this seems like a small but mighty company built around good vibes and great business practices. But you guys are massive. Like you've been able to take this and scale it to, I would argue, wild proportions. Talk to me about what the path to scale looked like, what the plan was initially, and how you guys grew.
Josh, the plan initially was, can we make one restaurant a success?
Right.
Remember,
I'm not going to fuck this one thing up,
exactly.
And we'll go from there.
That's right. And Mike and I wasn't trying to build a huge company. We're still not a huge company. I'm still not trying to build a huge company. I'm trying to build a company that we think is awesome, and that all the stakeholders around the table, farmers, investors, employees, me, Mike, our guests, that we think is awesome. Service that feels great. People who want to come back. A business that works and works for tomorrow. And so we were like, hey, if we can make this first one a success, we thought we could do 6 or 7 million. That was our forecast in our first year, downtown Washington, D.C. And it was still pretty ambitious. We did 8 million in the first year in that location. That restaurant now, 18 years later, does north of 20 million. But then we're like, hey, you know what? We have evidence. We can open a second one. Okay, you know what? We have evidence. We're stable enough. Let's open a third. So our view of growth and scale is we grow when we deserve to grow. And so I don't, these words like scale, leverage, juice it up with debt, get real estate pipeline. I don't use that language. I mean, I can talk the business of the business, but we're not trying to do that. Like, we have 8 restaurants right now. We did our own distillery because we could buy American product. We could produce American booze in American cardboard boxes and American glass bottles and buy more American grain. So, okay, it made sense. Let's do a distillery. We have our own bakery. Now we have our own catering and events, full service company. And now we have our own line of chocolates. So we're like, it's fun for us. We've promised our team we'll keep innovating. I think we would rather have more innovations and more stuff we're proud of than we would necessarily just be bigger.
Well, I want to talk about your footprints too. Because, we talked about TGI Fridays and 90s era. Some of these footprints are big, which, in today's era, we're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. You're looking for 30 to 50 seats. You'll supplement with third party and a little bit of catering and private events. How are you acquiring such large square footage and filling it?
So our restaurants range in size from 9,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet. I don't think I'm doing another 14,000 square foot restaurant. I don't
blame you, Dan. My God. I ran an 8,000 square foot nightclub in my 20s. And I mean, you could have 200 people in there and it looked empty,
Yeah. And you have 200 employees to keep the big ones,
right,
rolling. So I'd love to figure out how to do something smaller. We are actually going to open and do some little things like Founding Farmers at an airport. We're working on taking because we have these little sort of the bakery cafe counter inside several of our restaurants. We're looking, could we just do something smaller? I'd love to see a full service restaurant at maybe 8,000 square feet. And my view of the industry changing, I know everybody wants to do smaller. I know everybody wants higher check average. I know everybody's worried. Like in America, it's like, if you're not rich, you're poor. And so as restaurateurs, like, well, you got to serve one of those. This whole K-shaped economy is a problem to kind of serve in the middle. And as people use like robots and do all this stuff, my partner and I, we're sort of like, hey, you know what? We're still going to do full service restaurants and people are going to be able to come in and have fun. And we're still going to try to make it affordable for people. And if there's less and less competitors doing that, maybe that helps us. Or maybe I'm just stupid and I should just get on board with everybody else and get down to like less than 5,000 feet. But I think we're up for the challenge. And, you know, Josh, you said something earlier that I think is true. We're still doing it for us. And I love the energy of a big restaurant. I like a bar with 25 or 30 seats at it. I like a restaurant that maybe this room is carpeted and it's a little quieter and this is a little more banging and energetic. I don't want robots in the kitchen. I like all of our chefs, the men and women who, like, we're helping them build their lives. And a lot of them are immigrants to America, and I'm proud of that. And so I don't want to get rid of the jobs. I don't want to get rid of the seats. I don't want to get rid of the customer. And you keep the restaurants full, I think, by meeting the guest where they are. You know, we're not fancy. So we're the trade down, like people that might wear a suit and tie to a fancier restaurant and they do that. But like when they want something a bit more casual, they come to us. For some people, we're their trade up. We're like a really nice dinner out that's special. And maybe they have to really like budget for that. So we're trying to be able to meet the customer where they want, when they want. And, you know, and I'm listening to myself like, fuck, I don't know, man. I hope I'm right. Like, I hope we can keep doing this size restaurant.
Do I mean these things I say? I really hope they work.
Yeah. I know I mean them. I just, you know, you never know when your own business ideas are.
Well, what is it? What does the marketing on that look like? You know, again, when you've got these large footprints, when you've got all of these tables and chairs to fill, and like also with the understanding that like the obligation is to stay busy. And the reason is like the best meal you've ever had while you're seated in an empty restaurant tastes like shit, you know? So you have to keep it full. What does marketing look like? What does new customer acquisition look like? What does customer frequency look like?
So marketing for me still looks like the guest feeling the love when they walk through the front door. I believe it is still the single most important marketing thing we do is
Sure.
create that like hug them and love them, you know, upon arrival. It frames how they feel through the rest of the experience, and it frames what they write online or who they tell, etc. So call me old school, but I still really believe that, and I see it work and I hear it work. And we try to do all the new stuff. You know, we're retargeting. You come to our website and then we're going to meet you on Facebook and Insta. We're doing all of that. We do paid campaigns. We have started to test out, like starting maybe a year or so ago on TikTok. I'm not convinced that you can really build a restaurant guest relationship that way. I'm great with exposure, top of the funnel. But the place technology-wise for marketing that I'm really focused on now is AI visibility. So the internet treated me really well in 2003, 2004, 2005, like when we were starting our businesses, and I learned about SEO, and it really treated us well. Now, you know, and for the last year, the AI visibility, because I think what the future is, and it's not even the future, it's today, your AI agent's just going to know what restaurants you like. It's going to look out there for good restaurants. It's going to make your reservations for you with deep integration with OpenTable and platforms like that. And so I'm really focused on AI visibility and connecting that to the rest of our tech stack. And then I'm a believer in PR. I think earned media, like, you get on TV, people write articles about you. You get lucky and a guy like Josh says, hey, be on my podcast. So I think that the exposure in real life, let's call it in more traditional media, it is what the AIs are gobbling up to decide what their recommendation engine does of where they book people. So that's where my head is right now.
You're not wrong. A statistic that I read recently was that 50% of all search is happening through LLMs right now.
And Josh, can't you just imagine that in 6 more months, that's 75%, and in 18 months, it's 95%? Like, why would you search anywhere else except
Why would you search, right? Instead of just making, I want dinner tonight. Find me a place that you know I'll like based on my dining habits, right? Once everything is connected and it knows what you order, where you like to eat based on time of day, area of town you're in, it's just going to do all of it for you. And so much of it can be done now. I'll give you a great tool. So one of the things that I do with my clients is we use Claude Cowork to scrape websites. And then what it can do is it can optimize for AI visibility. And if you have a WordPress website, Cowork can actually go into the back end using the Chrome extension, and it can just fix all of the things because you have to have a couple of TXT files in there. Plus, it's the way the data is ranked. It can optimize because it's an LLM. It can optimize for readability. It can also look at your competitive set and see if, based on authority, right, perceived authority, they're outranking you, what you can do to outrank them. It's wild.
And Josh, this, I hope it sounds for people empowering and not intimidating, because never before in history has everyone had this kind of access on the cheap to super powerful tools. So someone could just like take this transcript of what you just said, sit down with Claude, and just do what you just said. It
Right.
doesn't matter where you went to school or if you've never written code. It doesn't matter. We can all be doing this. And I think for the chefs and restaurateurs that deserve their restaurants to be tasted and experienced, they got to learn from people like you saying exactly that.
It's incredible. I mean, it's just, and it's so early, Dan. Like, it's so early, and that, like, the competitive advantage and the ability to get out in front now, it compounds so quickly that, like, in 6 months, you could be 60 years ahead of everyone in your market. The other thing I think that is really exciting about all of this, and I think about the markets you're in, is like all of this stuff works really well in primary markets, but like it crushes in secondary and tertiary markets, right? Because no one's doing it. So you can, like, in a tertiary market, you can cannibalize 100% of the attention on the internet. Because again, like it's this unfair competitive advantage that just so happens to cost no money.
It is. And for all of us as restaurateurs, chefs, operators, um, it's easy to worry about, like it's hard, right? It's just like, as everybody knows, it's hard to run a good restaurant and stay in the game. And there's so much out of our control. Like in DC, where we primarily are, it has definitely felt like a hospitality recession here for a variety of reasons. It's been difficult. So I love the optimism of, okay, so what can we do? Like what you're describing, these are tools tools and tactics that you can do right now. And if your question is, well, how am I going to learn that? The tool will teach you. Sit down with Claude, tell Claude who you are and what you're trying to do, mention a few things you heard Josh say on his podcast, and be like, Claude, what are my first 5 steps? Show me how to do this. I mean, this has never existed.
And there's no prompt engineering anymore. And I know that like people will like write me and argue the point, but like there is an elegant prompt that will get you most directly to the thing you want. But you can also kind of fumble your way there, right? This is the outcome I want. What needs to be true in order for this to happen? And it will walk you through it. They call it vibe coding, right? Is this idea that you're able to do really complex things by using plain English. I want to talk about money. You brought it up a couple of times. You know, I think, coming off the loss of your first restaurant, it it makes it really clear that perfect operations aren't everything. And one of the other things that I found throughout my career is like, no one's going to make you money. Like it's, they say it in startup culture, right? The CEO is the CRO, is the chief revenue officer when they initially come in, because no one's going to make you money like you. I would assume, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that like once you felt like the ops were somewhat baked into the farmer concept, then it was just about money. It was just about how do we bring in revenue? How do we create new customer awareness? How do we capture that audience? And I would assume that that's been central to the growth thus far. Yes.
I certainly agree with you that no one will care as much or drive as much as the founder of founders. I think that is just true. However, my focus, even with that as my context, I still deeply believe that people have so many people have not are nowhere close to hitting their ceiling. They have so much aptitude. So while yes, let's call it the business development and the focus on what will grow the top line does stay a big part of what I do, I feel like I create a lot of value in the company by with the mentoring, the deepening relationships with the team, identifying those who can be big impact players, helping people bloom. And I'm certain that a lot of the best things in founding farmers are not a result of my direct work, but some of them are a result of me saying to someone, yo, I believe in you. Like, you can do this. What do you think? What would you do right now if you were the boss? Oh, okay, let's do that. And that for me is like the most powerful resource we have is to let people bloom. And I use that word because you just think about like unbloomed is sort of unimpressive. And you look at it, you could walk right by it, but bloomed, holy shit, that's amazing. And so that is a lot of the time that I spend on a weekly basis is helping people find that version of themselves.
Talk to me about focus. So, once you've reached a certain level of success, the phone starts ringing, right? And it's all of these amazing opportunities that are limited in time, but they're going to be really easy for you to execute. And it's going to make you billions of dollars, right? All of the developers that have called, and all of the people with the strategic partnerships and the opportunities and all of that. I've had multiple professional failures over the years. And one was worse than the rest. And the gift that failure gave me was focus, right? It hurt so bad. And I walked away so fearful that all I did was work maniacally to figure out what would work. And I've never deviated from that thing. And it served me really well. I think it's really easy. And we talked about hubris earlier. I think it's really easy to get full of yourself, right? Like all of my things are successful because I'm a successful person and everything I touch turns to gold. How do you keep yourself focused? How do you remind yourself that the main thing is the main thing and you don't get distracted by both the opportunities, quote unquote, opportunities that are presented to you and the success that you continue to experience?
Well, I certainly don't have this mastered. That's my first disclaimer. I
Same.
completely agree with your framing. And this is the cognitive dissonance of I do believe this entrepreneurial mindset. I hear other entrepreneurs say it when they say, you know what, you got to say yes to everything because you don't know what the thing is. I hear other people say, you got to say no to everything so that you can just focus on the thing. So generally, you only know when you do that right in hindsight. So I have no advice about that because I don't know. What I try to do for myself, there's 168 hours in a week. I want to sleep for 56 of them. That gives me 112 hours. I have a written down list that I keep on my desk of all of the most important things to me in my life, like my why and what matters to me. And then I work on a weekly basis. I'm pretty intense with my schedule, like focused on, and I try to allocate my 112 hours after sleeping to that list of what's most important for me, how I'm creating value. Some of it's short term, some of it's long term, some of it's work, some of it's personal. For me, it's like I'm just one whole person. There's no difference between home, work, anything. And I definitely in my 40s, maybe when we started to have some success, you're right. You get invited to lots of things. You start to feel good at that. And you think like, oh, that's like that shit doesn't make you any money and it doesn't help. So by my late 40s, I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I seeing this stuff on my calendar that like, why did I say yes to that? And why am I spending my time elsewhere when I have all these employees? If I have time, I spend it with them. And so I do a few things outside of work. Like I teach at a university in DC, just one class, one semester a year. That's for me. Like that is like, I love that. It fills my cup. I learn stuff. It takes me away from my core business, but it makes me better, which makes me better in my core business. So I just try to bring that kind of diligence for every minute that I allocate to do it intentionally and see if it answers, if I can answer, like, why am I spending my time? Why am I talking to you? Why am I doing this? Why did I say yes? If it connects to my list, great. If not, I coach myself and say, yeah, I fucking put myself in the wrong place at the wrong time. I got to do better.
How do you learn? How do you stay on top of what's now and what's next? I mean, we've talked about marketing, we've talked about AI, we've talked about operations, we've talked about robots. The world is changing rapidly, faster than it ever has before. In the industry is changing slowly, but faster than it ever has before. And so, how are you staying in?
I
Both,
am a,
not just with what's going on in the industry, right? But the world, best practices, business in general.
I am a voracious reader. And for the younger generation, I have three kids, 23 boys, 22, 20, and 17. Coop, Oliver, and Finn. And, they listen to some of my stuff. So I'm just going to emphasize reading. That's how I stay. There is no method of inbound information for me that is more efficient and that's effective, and it sticks with me and it gets into my subconscious, so that when I'm walking the dog or things are percolating or I'm sleeping and the subconscious is doing its thing or whatever, I read a ton, and I read in the long form. And so and I read in print because I understand the neuroscience of the difference between reading with and without, reading with interruptions and without interruptions. And I do like to be plugged into the world, and I see that. So I've got some magazines I read, I got some papers that I read, I get some trades that I read, and then I have hobbies that I'm interested and I read. I'll watch video, but only in the long form. I try to not do short form because for my brain, I don't remember it. And I would say, Josh, for most people, I don't think most people remember information. I don't think you learn in the short form. Better to sit in class for an hour and pay attention than sit in class for 3 minutes and pay attention. So that's how I do it. And then I try to be a student of the world. Like everywhere I eat, everywhere I travel, every grocery store I'm in, every airport that I go through, every friend's house that I go over, like, what are people doing? And I try, even though I haven't done it very well in this conversation, I try to just shut up and listen. That's when I can hear stuff and learn.
And then let's talk about growth. So, we had said we were just going to build one. And if we don't fuck it up, maybe we'll do two. And then, what you figured out with one was that there were all these limiting beliefs, right? Your expectation was, this thing could do, 6 million a year, then 8, now 20, right? So you see that these things have massive earning capacity. And you look at the number of locations you have, you could probably spend the rest of your professional life just growing the top lines and bottom lines of these businesses. How do you approach growth? What's next?
First, it lines up with our why. It is fun. It does allow us to innovate. Your newest restaurant is always your best restaurant. That should be the hope. I think of them like kids. As a parent, you do get better. Not knocking my older boys, but you learn. And so for us, growth will be, how do we innovate? How do we stay fresh? Like, Josh, I'm scared. We're going into our third decade of the Founding Farmers brand. How do I not lose people? How do I attract Gen Z and Gen A? How do I keep the boomers where they are? What about the alcohol trends? So growth for us will be stay scared, keep learning, keep evolving, and then I think expand our product lines. Like, we'll sell $2 million in chocolate this year because we created it during COVID because we thought our guests needed it and wanted it. And then that product line has survived. And now I have to learn, like, what is direct to consumer? How do you use Shopify? Could we extend the brand? So growth for us will be the same as the idea was 18 years ago. Hey, the more we grow, the more family farmed product we buy, the more American ingredients we buy, and the more we spread this message, and the more jobs we create. And so that, like, I'm ambitious and I'm optimistic with the growth, and I'm fucking scared. You know, it's tough out there.
Oh, it is. What should we steal from you? What are the tactics, the tools, the strategies that have served you well but aren't unique to you that we could adopt and enjoy the benefit of ourselves?
I can only, like, it's not advice. I can only share again what works for me, but I would say remembering to see every employee as a whole person, forget their uniform and forget their business card. They are remarkable as an entire human being. Find out what they need, irrespective of their uniform or their business card or their current job role, and help them fill their own cup, fill their cup. Your people will bloom. I have evidence that works. That's why I do so much work in the mental health space. And when my employees, like, you're going to go through a divorce or you're struggling with your anxiety or your whatever, it's like, yo, I'm going to help you with that because the ROI is enormous and it feels good. And then I would say systems. You got to write it down. Talk is cheap. Ideas are free and worthless. All that matters is what you write down. And then if you do what you write down, and if you're not writing it down, whether it's your entrepreneurial idea or you're not writing it down, if it's your system of how you're going to write prep, you don't have a written system for prep or production in your restaurant, then you're not serious. Like, you're just not serious about prep or production. And I think it takes the statements like that, because nobody likes to be told they're not serious. And so when someone holds that mirror up to me, I'm like, shit, I got to do that. So those would be my two things: hold people and then write it down.